Welcome, everyone, to the men's show on AWAKEN Catholic. Today, I'm joined by three of my brothers in the faith, and we're going to be talking about whether or not we're going to have our dogs and cats and animals of all kinds in heaven. And it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I think it's important because...
There's a cat climbing up the wall over there.
The cat wants to know,
Honestly,
too.
Seriously.
But I think that this is a topic that's going to kind of help us understand ourselves more as well. So all of that coming up right after this. All right, boys. So today we're going to talk about animals in heaven. Is it a thing? Should we look forward to that? It's going to be a really interesting conversation. Even just leading up to recording today, I was getting frustrated that we had so many conversations we didn't record on this topic. But before we begin, I want us to introduce ourselves. I'm Nick Della Torre.
I'm Rob Holler.
John Mark Grodi.
Peter Range.
All right. Also, before we get started, John Mark, if you want to...
Thing, Mon Capitan. If you like what we're doing here on the Men's Show and on AWAKEN Catholic, join the AWAKEN Nation. Go to awakencatholic.org/donate. You know, a one-time or recurring donation. We really appreciate that. Supports this ministry of bringing truth through beauty. And another great way to support the ministry is by downloading the Hallow app, which is a Christian meditation app. It's very beautiful, well implemented. Many of us here at the Nation use it. Go to hallow.app/awaken and get the 30-day free premium subscription.
Yeah, beautiful, man. The other thing I'll add to that is you might notice if you're watching this episode, you know, John Mark and Rob are so beautifully and brightly lit, and Peter and I are just kind of off to the side in the shadows.
It's part of our terms.
If you want to,
the contract.
if you want to help us have even lighting at AWAKEN Catholic Studios, join the AWAKEN Nation by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Nice. All right, brothers.
I figured there had to be a reason.
Yeah.
Hey, they got lights over here they're not using.
Oh my gosh.
It's a ploy.
Not true. All right. So how did we get into this? Because we weren't even planning on talking about this. And then when we were preparing for the show today, somehow this kind of came out of the blue. Does anyone remember how this topic came up for us?
No
idea.
Rob?
I think I just asked.
You just put it out there?
Yeah, I just said it.
It connected to something.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I don't know. Your cat was about to chew on those wires there a second ago.
That
and
one's
I thought
definitely not going to
our
happen.
talk was
We don't
going
want
to
to
get
test this
really
hypothesis.
practical. So call the kids
Oh
down
my
and
gosh.
have the conversation.
right
So
All right, so why don't we begin the way that our conversation began? Like after it was initially brought up, John Mark, you shared that you see eye to eye with C.S. Lewis. So why don't we begin by kind of setting the stage with sort of arguments for the sake of, or for the idea that cats, dogs, animals are going to be with us in heaven?
Before John Mark does that,
just kidding.
Can I just make the statement that Rob is not wearing shoes? And are we all comfortable with that for the rest of the show?
Hey, little Jubilee.
I'm uncomfortable.
yeah,
If you're not watching, you missed out on a really cute
Get
cat.
over it.
Yeah.
That jumped onto Rob's
Anyway,
lap.
sorry.
All right, thank you for highlighting.
we should also
Rob's
talk
lack
about
of
our
footwear.
implicit bias. We'll go around and say what pets we have.
Oh, the cat is on it.
That's fair. Okay, what pets do we have?
I have a dog. I'm a dog and cat person. I can swing both ways there.
I have no pets at the moment. However, there are some pets that have been very dear to me, including Irma and Max. Thanks, guys, for watching.
That's so great.
yes.
No, I love animals in general. Just, yeah.
Yeah.
I have one cat, Miss Calico Mittens. So, that's her name.
Please tell me you named her.
You named her that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. She's got six. What was toes? She's polydactyl.
Nice.
So it's mittens. is
Really?
where it comes from. Yeah.
Mittens.
Both of
6
her front
toes.
little paws.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
She's got big little
And
mittens.
she didn't even grow up in like an irradiated city in Russia. Like,
No, it's a normal thing.
okay.
It happens.
Interesting.
Specifically in calico cats.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
And the majority of calico cats are female.
I did hear
Almost
that.
Like I think it's like 90% of them are female.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Couple lucky guys.
Yeah, and one of our kittens, actually, the reason I heard that is because she's like, I think it's called tortoise something or other.
Yeah.
Colleen, what's the name of that? Tortoiseshell.
Yeah.
And similar to calico, most of them are female. So
Interesting.
apparently, although it's 2020, I'm not sure what she identifies as. We should ask. But anyways, so I have 3 cats. In my life, I've had cats growing up, and usually our dogs were poodles, mini toy poodles. I am dreadfully allergic to any animal that sheds, but in particular cats, which tells you the type of people in my family and that I'm married to. They just don't really love me. But here we are. No, I actually take allergy medicine.
This issue has a real practical import for you.
But I take allergy medicine every single day because I do love the cats, and I like sleeping with them. And
If cats are in heaven, will you be allergic to them? Yes or no?
no.
There we go.
Maybe that's a whole other episode. I don't know. Cool. So thank you for the idea to share our implicit bias. So John Mark, back to C.S. Lewis and kind of the thoughts you had about that.
I don't have the quote in front of me. Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't think Lewis would have ever posited it as a definitive proposal that there are pets in heaven, that this does happen. I think, if I remember correctly, his speculation was that perhaps, we could speculate, perhaps we ennoble the beasts that we love and that we care for in some way. And we don't know a lot of the details of heaven. And I think that's one of the main kind of philosophical, theological points here that to play around with, which is that we can say, there are things we can say in the negative about heaven. It's not X, Y, or Z, but there's a whole lot that we can't necessarily, that we can speculate in the affirmative. We don't know the details. I brought up a connected point, once when my son, I think it was maybe 6 or 7, and he's got a teddy he loves a lot, and we're in mass, and he's beginning to understand more of what's going on. And one day he starts crying in mass, and he says, "Daddy, I'm not sure if I want to go to heaven because I don't know if Teddy will be there." And in that moment, you're a father, your daddy hasn't encountered this question before, and many of the topics connected to it. And what I could say to him there was like, God, we don't know what heaven is like. Mm-hmm. Okay, what I do know is that you will be happy. You will be fulfilled in God. You will not be lonely. You will not be sad. You will be fulfilled and happy. That's what we can say positively. That's what's promised. We can say a lot of that positive thing about what Christ has promised. But the details of that, of what a new heaven and a new earth looks like, for human beings, I think that's all kind of in the realm of speculation. And so back to your original point here, in terms of what Lewis said, I don't think he would have ever, positively made the argument, yes, there are definitely dogs in heaven. But he was one to say, well, no, we don't know those details. And perhaps it could be so if God set things up that way.
Interesting.
So I want to say, and I really hope that animals are in heaven. I really do, or did love Max and Irma very deeply. However, from a theological approach or concept, I think that there are some things that we do want to define to say, this is what we do know to be true.
Sure.
And so the catechism would point us to the fact that we do believe that human beings are the crown of God's creation. And part of being the crown of God's creation is the fact that we have this immortal soul destined, unlike any other creature, to live eternally with God forever. Mm-hmm. So the human soul we know is immortal, does have a destiny, whether that's eternal bliss or the other way that we don't want to go. Animals, some of it is conjecture, but we would say that animals, because they don't have the rational ability to think about good and evil the way that we do, they don't have the ability to sin. And so not having the ability to sin, they don't have the need of a savior. They don't have a higher purpose than what is here on this earth. So I think the new heavens and new earth and that idea or concept should be kept in the context of there isn't a need for them to be in heaven. Perhaps they could be, but there isn't really a need because going back to your son's example, he wants Teddy to be there because he thinks Teddy is a part of what makes him happy. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, God is the one who makes us ultimately happy. And if we're before the beatific vision, we will be happy. We won't need Teddy there because happiness will be directly before us 24/7.
Yeah, if you love Teddy, you will lose him. But if you hate your life, so to speak, for Christ's sake, you will gain it. Now, what that gain looks like in a heavenly sense, again, that's where We just don't know. What we do know is that you can't hold on to this world and expect to keep it.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you do let go and you cooperate with God, we don't know. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what he has prepared for us.
Yeah.
It's kind of C.S. Lewis was big on the topic and how that would look, and he posited that the only books you will have in your library in heaven are the ones that you gave away.
I love that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yes, that's why I buy multiple copies of all my favorites. And just
Cheating the system. Cheating the system.
That's amazing. The other thing that makes me think about, though, is that animals, and especially pets, they're not, all animals, they're not just things. They are living creatures. They're not necessarily intellectual. They, according to something I'm going to read in a little bit, they don't have spirits the way that we have spirits. But I think that we still, I was thinking about the example of your son and what Peter was saying, that that he was sad because the idea of losing something that made him happy, but it's not a something. It's a creature that he has a relationship with. So it's the lack of that relationship that would make him sad. And God is a God that loves relationship. And it'd be kind of irresponsible of us to say, yeah, but God only cares about relationship between a person and another person or whatever. We don't know that God doesn't care about our relationship with our pet. A lot of times people have emotional therapy pets that really do. There's a really important place that pet has in their life. And so I wouldn't want to dismiss. It'd be different than if your son was feeling that way about a toy, right?
Because that's what Teddy was, right? Teddy's a toy.
I thought it was a real.
No.
I thought it was one of your pets.
Teddy bear. This was Teddy
I'm
bear.
so sorry.
No.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Teddy the bear.
But it's a connected topic in the sense of we are talking about something non-human.
Yeah.
And again, so in the moment, what do you say to a kid?
Yeah, totally.
My emphasis was on, listen, love God and trust that, that you will be perfectly satisfied. But again, the details, you can't rule it out, though.
Yeah.
And even in that case, I would just, say Teddy will be in heaven. To avoid the crime.
Sure. So our next episode is going to be about white lies.
Yeah, lying to your children.
We have to, meet our kids though exactly where they're at. And I'm sure you said something of that nature that comforted him or whatever. But even that sense of that the pet or the teddy bear, they're a part of relationship that we have, or in a relationship with our animals. The reality is, unfortunately, not all people, we hope that all will be saved, but some people are making the choice not to pursue eternal life through their actions, through their beliefs, whatever it may be. So, and I want every one of my family members to be in heaven. But it's why I work so hard to share the gospel with them, because I recognize that they might not go to heaven based upon, what they believe or how they're living their lives. But when I get to heaven, or say please God, I don't make it to heaven myself, and my brother does, for example, my brother's not going to be less happy because I'm not in heaven. Because the fullness of everything that he needs, wants, desires will be there.
Interesting.
So I think there's, go ahead.
So it kind of, talking just now makes me think of St. Francis. And would you say his preaching of the gospel to the birds was just practice? He did that, right?
Is that canonical? I don't know.
I'm not sure if he did that.
There's a lot of stories about him. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Scratch that. Maybe he did. But I do think his, the fraternity that he had with all of creation, specifically animals, I think in some way, it kind of points to this desire we have to ascribe some sort of personhood to animals as people. I think that's...
That
person,
personhood is the wrong
don't use
word.
person. That's a very loaded term for Catholics.
Well, what's a...
what do you mean by that?
I'll give you an example. If there's a stray raccoon is at the door, someone might say something is at the door, right? But if it's a pet that you know and you care about, through that process of relationship, you would say someone is at the door.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say that either. But I do know what you're trying to get at, in the sense of we do sense and at least act as if there is some sort of qualitative difference between the beasts, and those beasts that we have domesticated and trained and
ennobling. So what like what
that
is
was
ennobling?
Lewis. That's what Lewis.
It's like
I don't know what it
a
is.
heightened dignity is what you're
Right.
getting
That's
at.
all I'm trying to say. Nothing weird. For the record.
This whole thing is weird.
But it's like the idea of like we set boundaries for these animals and feed them a fence rather than it's not just a stray dog running around who somehow means less
Well, does
Yeah.
it though?
to us personally.
To us, personal subject, no differently than like my kids matter more to me than you do. Is that what you're getting at?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I just say that because inherently, so there's a heightened dignity in an animal that we develop a relationship with, in a sense, in terms of where that animal sits in our hearts and minds. My cats matter more to me than other cats do, but inherently, a cat is a cat and a cat is an animal, and it's on the same playing field as another animal.
Whew, man, we're getting deep here.
I don't know.
Because if you're out in the woods and you kill a rabid dog, that's one thing. But if I kill your cat,
Well, but you're killing a rabid dog is not the same thing as killing another dog.
killing a dog, killing a wild
Right.
dog versus killing your.
And my
is
point-
there any difference? I don't know.
What I'm not trying to say, I am not trying to say that this is a lower dignity, like that it matters less because they're animals. I'm saying that animals are animals, and like my stepmother, she has such a beautiful compassion for animals that suffer, and she's always picking up a suffering animal off the street, taking them to a shelter, like, and that is beautiful. Like they are feeling pain, even if they aren't a spiritual being, like they're suffering, and I love valuing this. It's very St. Francis-esque to me, like to see they are beings too. They're, if you had to choose between helping a homeless person and helping an animal in some bizarre hypothetical, you obviously help the homeless person.
Yeah, none of us are questioning that here.
Right. Yeah,
Just,
exactly.
just so
But
you're
why
all
would
clear.
it matter to help a suffering animal? Like what dignity and importance does that even have? And I feel like it's pretty intrinsic. Like we all see that, we would all feel that way.
Is it just subjective or is there something objective there? Yeah.
Well, so like Psalm 19 says, all of creation, all of the firmament, like it proclaims the handiwork of God. Like, so all of creation, everything that's created, like the master and something like the artist and his painting, like it says something about who God is, and all of it is created for God. So we care about intrinsically the animal because it comes from that which is ultimate good, God himself. So the creation is good too, and we want to care for all of what we've been given dominion over, including the animals. So when the animal is suffering before us, we want to instinctively reach out to want to help them because that is, it comes from the master artist, it comes from God himself. So I think that's why we have that inkling to do that. Yet at the same time, in our culture and society, there's a lot of, whether it's, the way that we process our meat and things of that nature that maybe we don't care about behind closed doors because, we're like, well, I'm eating that. Right. So there's a lot of,
that's very real.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different directions we could take it here. But if I might return us to that sense of detachment you were talking about before, like, with the teddy bear and not necessarily needing the teddy bear when we go to heaven. There's a great story, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it talks about an Irishman who loved Ireland so much that he wanted to take Ireland to heaven with him when he died. Right? Have you guys heard this before?
No.
So he's on his deathbed, and he was very poor, and he reached down into the ground and grabbed some dirt, some Irish dirt, because he was going to take it to heaven with him, right? So he gets to heaven, and he's at the pearly gates, and St. Peter said, I'm sorry, you can't come in. You've lived a worthy life, but you can't bring anything into heaven with you. He's like, I'm not going into heaven without, Ireland with me.
Yeah.
And St. Peter just, he tries to convince him, doesn't do it. So Jesus comes out, tries to convince him, but even Jesus himself can't convince him. So Jesus goes in and he gets his mom, the Blessed Virgin, to come out. And, the Blessed Virgin comes out and she says, oh, sweetie, just come home to heaven. And so moved by the presence of the Blessed Virgin, he's like, all right. So he drops Ireland to the ground. He walks through the pearly gates, and behold, all of heaven is Ireland.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So like the sense of all of what we desire and have here on earth, and what we cling to, and what we desire to be in heaven forever, including our pets, if we can let go of the idea that our exact pet needs to be into heaven because God knows exactly what we need, it will be there in a sense, and we will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that gets back to a conversation we had when we were off camera. I made the comment that from my perspective, I would theorize that if God, in his mercy and his love for us, were to have our pets in heaven with us, it wouldn't actually be literally our pet, because when we go to heaven, that's like a spiritual thing. That is our spirit, which is undying. What?
New body, man. Resurrection here.
Yeah, right. But that's because we are spiritual. Like, all right, let me pull out the quote that.
Do it.
So this is the book, Theology for Beginners. I'm sorry we have to go back to the beginner stage for you guys.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate
Not any Gnostic novel or anything.
Chew up the carrots first before you feed them to me here.
All right, so
Gross.
so this actually, before I read that, there's just one sentence here I'm going to read at the beginning.
We will wait patiently.
Spirit is the being which has a permanent hold upon what it is so that it can never become anything else. Okay? So if we were just material and we die, that's the end of the story. But it's because of our spirit, the fact that we are spiritual, rather, to sound less dualistic, that is why we continue on, because that does not end. And so then moving from page 17 to page 76, in this we are unique. No other being is compound of spirit and matter as we are. Angels are spirit with no matter to complicate it. Cats are matter with no spirit to complicate it. Every living body, plant, animal, man, has a principle of life. That is, it has a constituent which accounts for its being alive. This is its soul. So it's drawing a contrast between the word spirit and the word soul. Soul is almost like the life force, the being of being alive, in a sense. The souls, the life principles of plants and animals produce no vital activities which rise above its matter. They are marvelous enough. They animate the body. In plants, they make possible movement and growth and reproduction. In animals, some faint likeness of knowledge, some faint beginning of social life as well. But the soul of man not only animates the body, it has powers of its own, powers utterly outside the possibilities of matter. So the pet does not have a spiritual component that continues on. So in my perception of the situation, if we have our pets in heaven, it's God recreating them, even if he recreates them and restores the memories and the experiences that made that pet what it is for us. But it wouldn't literally be like the spirit of our pet, but maybe our experience of that relationship with the pet would remain the same regardless.
Because there's no it.
Exactly.
As far as we know and can tell.
Right.
I'm not sure if we can be definitive on this because it's beyond our. But
Yeah,
that would be the thing, is that there is a you that is Rob Holler. There isn't a you that is
Precisely.
That's at least the position here being articulated.
Yeah.
Just seems hard to I don't know. It seems hard to know that with definitive, I know a lot of theologians have said so. And some have said otherwise. Just seems difficult.
Well, because we can say positive things about humans, because that comes to us through revelation. God has told us what we are, but we don't have a sort of definitive thing about, again, the details of heaven, about what exactly it means for an animal to be a strictly material thing without a spiritual element. We can't get outside of that to examine it scientifically. So we can only speculate about what that means.
But we do know from the creation accounts that we were made differently than the other animals. So for example, even just that a part of us, we have divinity as a part of what we are. Like God breathed the breath of life into us in a different way than any of the other parts of creation. And so there's a distinction between the plants and the animals that he created.
Certainly.
At a spiritual level, a very big distinction between that and what we are.
Right. We just don't know the nature of that distinction fully.
At a minimum, it's that we've been implanted with divinity, like it's intrinsically part of what we are as humans, in contrast to anything else. And that divinity is, the spiritual component.
And so I'd say there's two questions here. One is trying, the nature of animals qua animals, as they are. But then I think that the question I do want to make sure we get back to is, again, this speculation of Lewis is that does something happen differently in those beasts that we ennoble, that are our pets, that
like, are we almost in a sense breathing that breath of life into the animals?
does something happen to them? And here, try this one on for size. What happens to art in heaven? Is Beethoven's Ninth in heaven somehow? If you're a great painter on earth and you paint a bunch of stuff, now certainly if you're attached to those paintings, that could keep you out of heaven. That story is a really good one. But is that painting just gone?
I'm going to say yes. Just like marriage is gone.
Well, you don't. That's a whole other topic. Exactly
but the
what
idea,
that
I guess
means
the idea
too.
of the painting, the image of the painting, like, do we just forget and shed
certainly we don't forget it.
All of our experience, and like I don't know.
Well, going back to Lewis, I think he has, and I'm trying to think where exactly it's at, but he said like all art, culture, civilization will one day cease. The only thing that will last into eternity is the eternal souls that are now present before your senses. Like, so I might say yes too, although that pains me very much because there are some beautiful works of art, but it doesn't necessarily mean art itself will be gone, but maybe the works on this side of the eternal,
Right. Well, but again, so we don't know the details of what it means that there will be a new heavens and a new earth. We're left to speculate on what that means.
And there's obviously music, which is art, because we see accounts of that in heaven, in a sense, right? Like the angels singing "Holy, Holy, Holy," and I just think that what we understand art to be might be what fades away. Because right now, art lifts us, it elevates us, and is meant to be transcendent in a sense to the beautiful, to the divine. But when we are in a in a fully like intertwined union with God that goes beyond anything that we could imagine with another person here on earth in marriage, or like when we're in union with divinity in heaven, we need not anything to point us to that. Like, it's there. And so it might play a different role.
But just because it is there, I guess one thing I've always liked about the idea of God is like it's kind of like a more generous love.
Oh, sure.
In a way that, like, just because God completely fulfills us doesn't mean we don't need our friends.
Because that's the way that the Lord has set things up.
What greater beauty and love, it's not greater than God. But I think there's a desire for, more generosity and more love. And that I think part of that desire is what invites us into that relationship with God.
Yeah.
Well, and we see that in the creation accounts, right? Like, we started out in a beautiful relationship with God that was incredible. Yeah. And even in that context, before the fall, he created everything. He created the plants, the animals, for our sake. And who's to say he wouldn't similarly want something in the new earth?
Because even on this side of heaven, again, especially as Catholics, we have an appreciation for, hey, this fairy tale that we live in, maybe other fairy tales have different laws, but in this fairy tale that God has made and put us in, he works through matter. He makes us body and soul. He works through relationships. He works through sacraments, wine and bread and water. Like, he uses things. He's instrumental. He doesn't have to. Even now on this side of heaven, he doesn't have to do any of those things, but that's the way he's decided to set up this particular fairy tale we live in. And so, again, we don't know the details of that new heaven and new earth necessarily. A lot of it, I think, is properly speculative.
Well, it's kind of neat because we have little like glimpses even in divine revelation, like when Jesus comes back, like, so he has the body, but yet he can walk through walls. Like,
right.
He has the body, and he doesn't need food, but he eats fish.
It's breakfast.
So it's going to be really exciting to see how God kind of works it all out. And we can have, like, part of me's wanted to look at the camera the whole time and talk to those people who love their pets so deeply. like we
do it, Pete. Do it.
Look at the camera. Which camera?
There's too many of them. Pull Joe Biden.
But that said, I'm not going there.
Come on,
I'm
man.
getting myself in enough trouble with politics this past couple months. But that sense of, like, the God of the universe who made, light and dark and the seas and the mountains out of nothing, like is going to be able to figure this out. At times. And
We are not.
Worried that we'll be somehow incomplete. But yet, if this is the modus operandi, the way that God has operated before, the second coming, then we can imagine the second coming, he's probably still going to work and operate through, these relationships that we have, and praise God for that.
Well, and bringing up the resurrection of the body, like I think you did earlier, John Mark, and tying that to what you just said with what we see in the resurrected Christ, it's really interesting. It'd be really to read those accounts about the resurrected Christ in the gospel and in the Acts of the Apostles and think like, oh, that's because he's God, right? And he can do whatever he wants. But if you really sit down and think about it, that's a broader question, because Christ is the new Adam as well. And we're meant to be what Christ and Mary were, in a sense, in our lives. And so if you consider that, what does that look like for our own resurrected bodies? And really what we see in Christ with his material body, which was truly material, which is why he challenged Thomas to touch him. Yeah. It wasn't just a vision. It was a truly material body, yet it had these incredible abilities that would blow our minds to see. It blew their minds to see it. It frightened them initially, right? And it's just interesting to consider, like, that actually might also be where we're headed.
Sorry, you do. I'll hold on.
Well, just what you just said just makes me think of why I love being Catholic so much, because the Catholic loves the things of the earth so very well, in the context of even salvation isn't just about us getting to heaven and that's it, but it's being born into a family, born into the Trinity. And Augustine said, that God became partakers of our humanity so that humanity may be partakers of his divinity. So we have this beautiful invitation to live right now the divine life. St. Teresa of Avila said it's heaven all the way to heaven. So right now, and that's why we bless our cars, we bless our homes, we
bless our pets.
We bless our pets, right? Because all of these things declare the handiwork and glory of God.
And if we're truly going to have material bodies, which we, in our understanding from a Catholic standpoint, that is the case.
A definitive thing,
then what we should assume that the new heaven and new earth will relate to that body in material ways. And so it isn't just this incredible infinite bliss that we'll experience in heaven as like an abstract idea, but we will have a truly material existence that surpasses what we understand right now, but it will be truly material in many ways, which we saw in the resurrected Christ. As such, we should assume that there are going to be implications to that. Like, why wouldn't we have pets? Why wouldn't we have homes? What does that look like?
Again, I think, practically speaking here, the two dangers that we want to stay away from, and we've talked about these both, is that on the one hand, we don't want this kind of speculation. This kind of speculation could be a negative thing if what it leads us to is to hold on too tightly to this world, right? Where it might interfere with love and relationship.
It should do the opposite.
Right. So we don't want that, but we also don't want to drift too much in the other direction that has happened many times in the church, which is to kind of drift into this, spirit good, body bad, that is so thoroughly un-Catholic. It's so thoroughly contrary to what we have in the incarnation. Christ made us this way for a purpose. He made us humans. He made our human nature for a purpose. And he came down and took on flesh to show us what that looked like, that integrated whole life in abundance could look like. And so Christians have always been having to recorrect and bring it back to the middle where, we're not going to over speculate about what that will mean in the next life, but here and now we are called to be, human in the fullest, in imitation of Christ and his great saints. So it's striking a balance there, taking it back to where this all started with the animal stuff. Again, that's why even when our sons or daughters ask about these things, I think what we want to stay right in that proper realm of speculation. Dominic, I do not know how to answer that question. What I do know is that God is good. He made you a human being. He gave you a body. He made this earth. He made all these good things for purposes. And as long as you remain attached to him, you won't be lacking in any good thing, any bit of fulfillment. And that's what we have to hold on to while we then have fun speculating about what it might be, And
that reminds me of Andrew Reinhardt's most recent 2 episodes.
This is like his.
It really is.
We really should
have been here. But in his last 2 episodes on physically spiritual, he talked about really ultimately what's at the core of any sin is a lie, and that believing a lie, and that lie is that God doesn't love us enough to provide whatever source of well-being or health or whatever. And so, like, he brought up the example of going back to the Garden of Eden. The very first sin was the source of that was a lie, and it was the lie that God doesn't want us to be like him, when it literally says before that he made us in his image and likeness. And in a similar way, like, if I as a man, if I feel like I have to provide for my family and blah 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 blah, like, God provides for my family, and me kind of taking the bull by the horns in a way that makes me a worse father or a worse husband, and maybe even worse at my job, by not trusting God enough. If I have too much of a ninja grip on my job, on my work, then that lie, the sin there, the lie is that I provide for my family and God is not the provider. And so, like, I love that example you brought up about the teddy bear. Like, if we're rooted in the confidence that God wants us to have true happiness and peace, and that he truly wants to provide what's best for us, then if the bear is that, why not? But we don't know.
Yep. Don't be like Lenny.
Don't be like Lenny.
From Mice and Men. Anyone? All right, moving on.
Well, so
he loves the bunny too much.
We're called to,
sad.
To image God and to image, I think, his creativity. And so that doesn't mean we say, okay, step aside, God, I'm gonna do this on my own. But it also doesn't mean that we step back and say, okay, God, go ahead, do my life for me. No, he wants to work through you. We're to walk humbly with God in that. And, going back to the example of art, my speculation on this topic where we started off with the animals thing is that, we do image God when we create. Whether we're a high artist doing paintings or music or something like that, or whether it's low art, the art of the common man. We just had an episode on Teresa's and my show about,
I loved that episode.
Property is the art of democracy. What you do with your home, to build a home, to grow a family, so to speak, in cooperation with God. You've imaged God in that creativity, that art of that building, that beautiful thing with God. And my speculation on pets would be, what if maybe that's something of what happens to the beasts when we domesticate an animal and we train them and they're able to, to catch the little thing in their mouth or roll over and play dead, whatever. Maybe there's something of art, of imaging God in ennobling, just like God ennobles us.
Interesting.
Maybe we ennoble the beasts in some way. And if in some way the art, the things that we create on earth, the relationships, those are somehow renewed and made more perfect in heaven, speculatively. Maybe that's maybe that could be the answer to the question of what happens to Fido. Pure speculation here.
Yeah, I find that to be very fascinating. That's very interesting. All right.
It's
Any other
discussion.
thoughts?
Yeah.
I was really anticipating that it would kind of help us to even navigate, like, understanding of ourselves more, which I think it did for me, and I pray that it did that for you as well.
Yeah, I hope that's what we exemplify here. Especially at this time in our country and our culture, like, there's a lot of strong feelings and a lot of confusion. But if we get down to the words, the meanings, the definitions, we can have good conversations where we come out at least understanding our own thoughts and being able to articulate them a bit better. And we need more of that. So this is a helpful exercise in that, hopefully.
That's beautiful. All right. Any closing thoughts? All right. So, John Mark, could you do me a favor and tell the people how they can help us get even lighting?
If you want to help Nick have even lighting and continue to feed his kids and his pets.
Oh my gosh. We are not receiving a salary from Awaken Catholic, so it's not that. AWakenCatholic.org/donate. If you like this show, if you like the things that are happening on Awaken Catholic, beautiful art proclaiming truth through beauty. If you'd like to be part of that, if you want to see more of that, we'd love your support. AWakenCatholic.org/donate. You can be part of the Awaken Nation. All kinds of neat perks going along with that. More to come in the future. That's right.
You can also download the Hallow app, which is a great app for you to take with your morning cup of coffee or your tea before you go to bed or anytime throughout the day. I don't know why I always go to the morning and evening stuff. It's a Christian meditation app. It's beautifully implemented. We find it very useful. Many of us here at the Nation use it. And if you download the Hallow app at hallow.app/awaken and get the 30-day free premium trial subscription, that supports our ministry. Did I get it all?
You nailed it.
It's hard. There's a lot there. Yeah.
Whew. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for diving into this topic, and thank you for watching and or listening. And please join us next time or check out the other shows on Awaken Catholic, and have a good one.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.